Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was on PBS's Firing Line with Margaret Hoover. Now, during their 26-minute-long discussion, the topic of Israel-Palestine came up, and Ocasio-Cortez's response on this issue is getting a lot of crap online right now. So I'm going to play out this clip that's about 3.5 minutes long and then give you my thoughts. Watch.
You have not really needed so far to take many foreign policy positions because you were seating a Democratic incumbent. But now you are very likely going to be going to Washington, and you'll have to sort of build out some of those foreign policy positions. You, in the campaign, made one tweet or made one statement that referred to a killing by Israeli soldiers of civilians in Gaza and called it a massacre, which became a little bit controversial. But I haven't seen anywhere. What is your position on Israel?
Well, I believe absolutely in Israel's right to exist. I am a proponent of a two-state solution. And for me, this is not a referendum, I think, on the state of Israel. For me, the lens through which I saw this incident as an activist, as an organizer, if 60 people were killed in Ferguson, Missouri, if 60 people were killed in the South Bronx, unarmed, 60 people were killed in Puerto Rico, I just looked at that incident more through just as an incident. And to me, it would just be completely unacceptable if that happened on our shores. But I am...
Of course, the dynamic there in terms of geopolitics and the war in the Middle East is very different than people expressing their First Amendment right to protest.
Well, yes, but I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition. And that to me is just where I tend to come from on this issue.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that?
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their housing and homes.
Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue. You know, for me, I'm a firm believer in finding a two-state solution in this issue, and I'm happy to sit down with leaders on both of these. For me, I just look at things through a human rights lens, and I may not use the right words. I know this is
That's very honest. That's very honest, and you're going
issue.
I mean, it's very honest, and when you get to Washington and you're an elected member of Congress, you'll have the opportunity to talk to people on all sides and visit Israel and visit the West Bank.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of those things that's important too, is that, especially with the district that I represent, I come from the South Bronx, I come from a Puerto Rican background, and Middle Eastern politics is not exactly what's at my kitchen table every night. But I also recognize that this is an intensely important issue for people in my district, for Americans across the country. And I think what's at least important to communicate is that I'm willing to listen and that I'm willing to learn and evolve on this issue, like I think many Americans are.
Okay, now, before I get to my thoughts on what Ocasio-Cortez said here, let me just try and clear the air around the occupation of Palestinians. So, Margaret Hoover is center-right. She worked in the Bush administration. She herself claims that she's center-right, but she did work for Bush. Now, maybe that's why she doesn't understand what the occupation of Palestinians means, but at this point, this is sort of common knowledge. So, let me just read out this from Amnesty International on how they view this. The Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, is in its 5th decade, and the undercurrent of violence and inherent abuses of fundamental human rights and disregard for international law inherent in any long-standing military occupation is presented by both sides. Both Israeli and Palestinian civilians continue to bear the brunt of the violence in the region. Human rights violations by Israeli forces in the occupied Palestinian territories have included, but are not limited to, home demolitions and the forced eviction of Palestinian families, punitive arrests, unfair trials, ill treatment and torture of detainees, and the use of excessive or lethal force to subdue non-violent demonstrations, as well as the use of restrictive legal means. So, on the occupation, Ocasio-Cortez is 100% right. So, I'm not sure if Margaret Hoover was pressing her here because she didn't know about this, or because she was trying to trip her up, but this is, so I'm going to get deeper into how Ocasio-Cortez performed here, but this is the problem with people who are honest, like Ocasio-Cortez. We second guess ourselves. So I also ran as a politician once, and you are sort of expected to know everything, and that's just not realistic. So when you are pressed on a topic, you have the potential to trip up like this because Ocasio-Cortez is not a sociopath. She's not like Donald Trump and can just bullshit her way through answers. She actually cares. So that's why she stopped and thought there, hey, maybe I don't have all the information here because Margaret Hoover doesn't understand what I'm talking about. So that's how I viewed Ocasio-Cortez's sort of weird response to that question. Now, before I get deeper into my thoughts on that, I just want to touch on the two-state solution part. So, look, I'm also not an expert in geopolitics. So what people like me and many others do is look to people who are more educated on this topic and care about human rights abuses. So I look to someone like Abby Martin, who's actually been there. And here's what she tweeted about. She tweeted on her thoughts about the two-state solution. So she said in response to Ocasio-Cortez's response here, I used to have hope for a two-state solution until I went to West Bank and saw how the tiny bit of land left for a future Palestinian state was already totally atomized by illegal settlements, which are increasing exponentially. One state with equal rights is the only humane solution. And she followed that up by saying, within the famous map of the deteriorating Palestinian state are different areas governed under Israeli military control, littered with dehumanizing checkpoints and illegal settlements encroaching on native villages. Our doc explaining the continued expulsion. And I'll have a link to that video below my video if you want to learn more about the conflict. Now, finally, let's get to my thoughts on Ocasio-Cortez's response here. So, I made a lot of notes because I have a lot to say about this. Just top level. I think this has been largely overblown. I think Ocasio-Cortez's response here was mostly fine. She is correct on the issues. Now, was she able to dive deeper into the details in a very confident and educated manner? No. So she does have a lot more to learn, and that's fine. But her response here is more correct than the vast majority of people currently in Congress. She's actually able to recognize that, yes, the Palestinians, the Palestinian people have been oppressed. Yes, they are being occupied by the Israeli government, by a right-wing Israeli government. Yes, they have been killed by a right-wing Israeli government. I don't understand what's wrong about this. She's correct. These are just the facts. Now, unfortunately, because of the current political landscape, these are controversial things to say, but they are just factual. Israel has committed human rights abuses. These are facts. So to try and paint her as not knowing anything about this topic, no, she clearly knows more than most politicians in Congress. So can she learn more? Yes, she can. But this really gets to the issue around confidence. Now, most politicians, when they don't know something, they have the confidence to skirt around the question and go back to their talking points. But Ocasio-Cortez actually cares about the issues. She actually is open-minded. She wants to learn more. And when you push somebody like that who actually gives a shit and you push them for more details and they don't know, they're not going to lie to you. They're going to tell you, yeah, I'm not an expert on this topic, but, you know, I have more to learn, but this is what I think. I come from a humanitarian point of view here. That was fine. So people, this is ultimately the problem. People are so used to seeing these phony, fake-ass staged politicians where they just use their confidence to blast through or jump around questions and nobody notices because they look confident doing it. So, I mean, one example is Trump. Trump constantly lies, clearly has no idea what he's talking about on practically every topic. But a lot of people don't even notice it because Donald Trump has the confidence to be able to fake it. And there are people who are better at that. So, I mean, people in media like Ben Shapiro. I mean, I have multiple videos on how this guy has lied his ass off, but he does it in a confident way. So people think he's telling the truth. People think he knows what he's talking about when he doesn't. And another perfect example of this is Joe Walsh. So I just did a video on how Joe Walsh got fooled by Sacha Baron Cohen's new show into supporting guns for kids. Kids ages 4 to 12 years old. Now, Joe Walsh did this. He said he did this in a tweet because of Israel. So he was getting a Friend of Israel award, and because he thought that this was part of it, that he has to that he's supposed to come out and support guns for kids, that he did it. Now, what does that tell you? So that tells me that Joe Walsh, like a lot of these people in media and politicians, they are corrupt. They are corrupted. They don't give a shit about the actual facts, about the actual issues. They have a position because they are paid to have that position, and they defend it at any cost. So, Ocasio-Cortez actually cares about the facts. She actually cares about human rights abuses. Joe Walsh, all he cares about is his unwavering support of Israel, and he'll say and do anything to be able to prove that. Even if it means supporting guns for kids. So I much rather have a politician like Ocasio-Cortez who is correct on the issues, but might not have all the details figured out, than somebody like Joe Walsh, or not just Joe Walsh, but all these politicians in Congress who are corrupted on the issues and also don't know what they're talking about, but they're confident enough to push their way through it. So, man, confidence is everything. If you are really good at faking confidence, you will do well in life because people will just think you know what you're talking about. You don't actually have to know anything. This whole thing is overblown. And the only reason I'm covering it is to hopefully clear the air around this whole interview. So you can't try and take someone down because of their lack of fake confidence in an answer. She gave what I think was a correct answer. She was questioned on a part of it about the occupation that she shouldn't have been questioned on because it's so obvious that, yes, there is an occupation of the Palestinian people. And now people on the left and right, or I should say on the right and left, are criticizing her when they shouldn't be.